Hi, and welcome to the second day of the Global Vegfest. Thank you for joining us for the health talks organized by Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. I'm Dr. Leila Dehban. I'm the education lead at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, and I will be your host today. If you missed the talks from yesterday, you can find the replays in the YouTube channel of Vegfest UK, and they are also available, on Facebook, on the on Facebook page of Vegfest UK. Anyway, our first talk today is by Dr. Chidi. He's an award-winning lifestyle doctor. He's trained in surgery and general practice. He's also the founding member of the European Society of Lifestyle Medicine. His mission is to bring health, healing, and hope to the UK and beyond. So, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Chidi.
Hello there. Welcome. And it's really a privilege to be here. And it's really interesting to be talking about such an important topic this morning. I don't think there can be anybody listening today who has not undergone some area of stress, especially over the past 18 months. So that's what we're talking about today. Stress, R.I.P. Let's get this stress to rest in peace. For those of you who don't know me, as Dr. Leila said, my name is Dr. Chidi. These are the ways that you can get hold of me if you need to get hold of me. And as she said, I spend a lot of my time dealing with reversing diseases. And those diseases, I use a program called Life Colors, and each color represents a different type of lifestyle or chronic disease. So I spend a lot of my time helping people to reverse them. And in there, the black color you can see there is actually stress. And I must say at the outset, stress is involved in absolutely every one of these lifestyle diseases. Stress doesn't make anything better. So if we really want to get to the root of any disease, why don't we try to deal with stress? How do we eliminate it? How do we get stress to rest in peace? Well, for me and for most illnesses I deal with, I say that the stages to recovery are meals, movement, and mindset. Meals, movement, and mindset. If you really want to get to the heart of any disease, you have to tackle all three. So even in stress, which many people think is it's maybe psychological, they have an element involved in the meals, in the movement, and in the mindset. So let's start off. Let's look at this. look at food and mood, if you like. I think if you talk about health to anybody and you ask them, well, what sort of things do we need to eat? These words come up often: antioxidants, anti-inflammatories. These are always the go-to guys for getting rid of disease. And with stress, it's no different. The more antioxidants we have in the system, the more anti-inflammatories we have in the system, the better our internal environment will be, and the better we're going to be able to cope physically with stress. Let's just have a little look at what we're talking about. There was a study done back in 2017 which looked at the effect of blueberries on the mood of children and young adults. So got a group of children. It's actually, you can do a double-blind controlled trial, and they disguised those people who were having blueberries and those people who were not having blueberries, and they found simply by increasing the amount of blueberries in the diet, the mood of these young children changed dramatically. It was over about 2 to 3 weeks. So that was quite a dramatic improvement. Now, part of my background, I did pharmacology and physiology, and I always want to know, well, how does this work? How does blueberries actually make your mood elevated? And the theory is that it acts a bit like how anxiolytics work on the GABA receptor. Remember that GABA receptor? As you bind to the beta receptor, the beta parts of the receptor, the channel opens up, and chloride ions can go in and therefore quieten down and relax the neuron. So that's one of the putative ways that it could actually be working. But we don't know for sure, but we do know that the more blueberries, the more phytochemicals that you have in your diet, the better your brain and the better your nerves are able to deal with any kind of stress or abnormality in the stability of our nerves. Here's something else, still talking about food and mood. We know about tryptophan. We know tryptophan is a massively important amino acid. It's one of the precursors, well, it is the precursor for dopamine and serotonin. If you really want to chill out, you're going to have lots of tryptophan. Funnily enough, tryptophan is found an awful lot in bananas. And I guess this proves the point, because you don't see too many monkeys that are depressed. But seriously, tryptophan, being the precursor for dopamine and serotonin, it is broken down by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase. So monoamine oxidase breaks down these neurotransmitters. And remember, these neurotransmitters are the ones that are trying to keep us happy, keep us concentrated. So as they're being broken down, the theory is that our mood will then go down as well. Our mood will lower. So if we have things in our diet that can actually inhibit the enzyme monoamine oxidase, MAO, then surely the amount of serotonin and dopamine stays higher in the system. And funnily enough, in the natural world, we do have such phytochemicals such as quercetin, which actually inhibits monoamine oxidase. This makes it a natural antidepressant. And, you know, when we're talking about stress and depression kind of go hand in hand. So food that we eat can inhibit the breakdown of dopamine and serotonin. Now, where do we get these phytochemicals from? Well, they're not present in animal products. They're not present in dairy, eggs, or anything like that. They are present in the good old leafy greens, good old berries, fresh fruit, and fresh vegetables. So it just seems to be that whether we're talking about heart disease, blood pressure, diabetes, we all converge on this thing. And the reason why we're here as plant-based health professionals is because we believe passionately that the more plants you eat, the better you're going to be. And it doesn't just respond to our physicality, it also responds to what we do with our minds. Here's something else. Yes, crime and nourishment. Many studies have been done, especially out in California, by the way, especially in the prison system. But there's many studies, including this study, which took just under 1,000 youths in the Michigan Youth Violence Prevention Center. And all it did was remove trans fats, meat, and dairy from the diet. That's all it did. They found that the levels of stress, anger, and violence dramatically reduced within a month. I know of another prison, a chap who ran a prison in California who changed the diet just for 2 months for adult prison offenders. Within the first month, the levels of violence reduced. In fact, they needed fewer guards on duty just because they had changed the diet. And that is all they did. Same exercise regime, all the other policies were the same, but just by changing the diet, it has done something by taking out all of that dairy, meat, trans fats, all of that. It seems to allow the brain in ways that many of us don't understand, but it allows the brain to be more settled and more quiet. One of the theories is that many of the things in meat are excitatory to the nervous system, excitatory to most cells. So if you reduce the amount of excitation, in other words, anti-inflammation, you can get to a place where people can be much more relaxed and they can deal with all of these other issues a lot quicker and a lot easier. Arachidonic acid, many of us have heard of this. This acid is present in meat, dairy, and eggs, and it increases inflammation. So the more inflammation that's in our system, the lower our mood is going to be. So what we're finding is the more anti-inflammatory foods we have, the more antioxidant foods we have, the better our potential to have a depression and stress-free day. And I've seen this happen even in my own life. I remember members of my family, when I was a vegan, when I became a plant-based professional many years ago, and they didn't really want to follow me. They said, no, I'm going to stick with my fish and my chicken and my eggs. Every now and again, for a week or so, they changed their diet. And apart from a bit of weight loss, apart from all of that, they actually found, you know what, I can concentrate better. You know, I don't feel quite as miserable when I wake up. So those sorts of things are quite clear. So food and meals have a very important part to play if we want to get stress to rest in peace. How about this then? Movement. Movement. I know there are doctors today who are prescribing exercise for people who have any kind of stress issues, anxiety issues, or depression issues. But this thing called exercise, I mean, there is a system, there is a society called Exercise is Medicine, and it's true. I mean, what exercise is able to do for the body, we all know. It makes you lose weight, you look better, your heart becomes more efficient, blood pressure goes down, can prevent cancer and all sorts of things. But it also has a dramatic effect on our mind and our state of well-being. There are many people who are absolutely diagnosed depressives who, if they don't go out to exercise each day, it's like they're without their drug. There's a couple of famous people who have to go on a cycle for about an hour. After that hour, you can feel that their stress levels have come down. They're able to cope with the day. There are many people who use exercise much more than they would use medication. I'm not saying you give up on your medication, but it is such a powerful tool. It should be used in our repertoire when we're trying to beat stress, when we're trying to beat depression. So if you add exercise to a great diet, a positive diet, you can actually reduce your levels of depression and reduce your levels of stress. In fact, you know, if you're like me, I mean, I exercise pretty much every day of the week. Now, I'll confess to you, I don't particularly enjoy most of it because I run 5K most days. And I don't actually enjoy, I never get this running high that everybody talks about. I've never had that in my life. But when I've finished, I feel so much better. When I've finished, it's like, yeah, it's like you've had a drug. Those endorphins are starting to kick in. I'm able to concentrate more. Even times when I feel really tired in the morning, it sounds counterintuitive to go out and exercise if you're tired, but you go out, you exercise, and your energy levels start to rise. So all that leads to a happier place to be. All that means that I can then cope with the day far better than I could have if I had not exercised. There have been times when I've been off exercise for about a week or so, and I notice it in my mind. I notice it in my mood levels. So exercise, that's a powerful tool also to beat stress. So certainly the meals, we know that, certainly the movement. Let's think a little bit about the mindset, because really when we're talking about stress or we're talking about depression, it occurs in the mind. You know, it's not occurring in the muscles, it's not occurring. And as much as we want to promote a healthy diet, and which is very important, as we said, really many of the things that are causing us to be stressed are not about our diet. You know, we're not stressed because we're not eating enough bananas, not stressed because we're not eating enough greens. There are other things. And the way our mind works, well, we need to change that in order to be, so in order to change the way our mind thinks, we're going to have to think slightly differently. And this is what William James had to say: you are not what you think you are, but what you think you are. It's sometimes we have a very negative impression about who we are, and that can happen to all of us. Doesn't matter how successful you are. But really, what determines our destiny is really about where we are focusing our thoughts. Where are we thinking? Where are we focusing on? So let's just have a look at that, because obviously it all starts in the brain. When I'm talking about depression or stress, it's very important to talk about how fantastic the brain is. You know, the brain is 100 billion on average nerve cells, each of them with 1,000 connections. So you really have something like 100 trillion connections going on in the brain. I mean, how do we even start to think about that number? I like to think about the Amazon rainforest, which is about 15 times the size of France, massive place, covered in trees. If you think about every tree and every leaf on every tree in the Amazon rainforest, you still would not come up anywhere near to the numbers of connections we have in our brain. It's a massively complicated organ. It does 50,000 trillion operations per second. But with all that, there are still difficulties. With all that, there are still things that can hold us back, and stress is one of them. I always like to refer to Elizabeth Blackburn when she came up with this study that got her the Nobel Prize on stress. It was a wonderful, wonderful experiment. She showed that not only does stress affect us mentally, it can affect the physicality of our DNA. She showed that got a group of women together who were under a lot of stress, many issues going on, took their blood, looked at the DNA of the blood and saw that these little end shoelace tags at the end of the DNA, telomeres that they're called, can be lengthened, which increases the length of your life, or they can be shortened, which reduces the length of your life. Now, whether they are lengthened or shortened depends on how you view the stress. Doesn't depend on the stress that you're in, but on how you picture, view, and think about the future of the stress that you're in. So even the DNA responds to how we think. Because what was found is that if people were overcome and overwhelmed by stress, by having some counseling, by having some help, by enabling them to think differently and even more positively about what they're going through, the DNA started to change and the telomeres started to lengthen, and their lives became a lot healthier and they lived longer, which is quite amazing. So what the message for me is that no matter what situation I'm in, I can overcome it. I can overcome the poor effects of it by changing the way we think. You know, in the old that phrase by Mahatma Gandhi is, you know, thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, habits become your character, and your character determines your destiny. But it all starts with what we think about. Also, some of the things that are causing us stress can be misunderstanding. You know, the people around us, often we think, well, if only this boss was different, I wouldn't be quite so stressed. If only my partner did this, I wouldn't be quite so stressed. But I love this this phrase from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which says, first seek to understand, then to be understood. I think that is a wonderful prescription for lowering our stress levels, understanding. Now, if you see what's going on in the world today, there's lots of misunderstanding going on. There's lots of people not wanting to listen to each other. But if we could just hold on for a second and say, well, look, this person who has an opposing opinion to me, perhaps they have something to say, and we can understand where they come from. That lowers our own stress levels. And that's what we really want to do. Because in order for us to be free from stress, we have to be free from the hostility. Diet is fantastic. Exercise is wonderful, but we must be free from that hostility. And we must learn how to change the way we think. I remember when I was a junior doctor, I was working in A&E, and this gentleman came in, big guy, came in late at night. This is when you had to really wait for a long time for a doctor in A&E. And big guy, and he came in and he said, Doctor, I've got a splinter in my finger. I said, okay, well, let me look at it. Okay, let me anesthetize your finger, then I can take that splinter out. He said, anesthetize, what do you mean? I said, well, I just need to inject your finger several times so that I can numb your finger, then I can take out the splinter. Okay. He said, well, I don't like needles, doctor. Now, as I looked at him, the guy was covered head to toe in tattoos, so I don't know how he got them, but I didn't argue with him. He was bigger than me. And I just said, well, look, unless I anesthetize your finger, I'm not going to be able to do it. He thought for a while, and then he said, okay, I'm going to go home. I can't do this. He went home. This was 2 o'clock in the morning. About a day later, that same guy came back into A&E. his finger was now swollen so big that we couldn't deal with it in A&E. He had to go to theatre. He had to spend a day in hospital, and it was all more painful and all more expensive than it needed to be. And the reason why we had to do that is because he wanted to avoid the little pain. By avoiding the little pain, it led to greater pain. And that is a principle that we all have. There are lots of things that we need to address in our lives. We need to address issues about ourselves, issues about our relationships, but instead of dealing with them, we put them off. And when we put them off, they don't go away, they just grow, just a bit like that boil in the finger. So what then happens is that, for example, when this guy came into the department, a little girl brushed past his finger and he screamed the place down. It wasn't the little girl's fault, but it's just because he hadn't dealt with that finger that everything was now sensitive. That's what happens to us in relationships. You don't deal with issues. The boil grows until it explodes in anger and stress and all sorts of anxiety. So what we have to do is start to take hold of the little bit of pain, which is dealing with the issue, to prevent the bigger pain down the road. So really, this is kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about the 3 areas of attack for stress. Yes, we have to deal with the meals, because what the meals do, I mean, we are what we eat. The meals form the architecture of our bodies. All those enzymes that go on that make us be able to think the way we think, that comes from the food that we eat. If we give ourselves the right fuel, if we give ourselves the right nutrients, we're going to be in a much better position to reverse and prevent stress and depression. Movement is essential. The more we move, the better. And it doesn't have to be high impact stuff, because actually, when you think about it, if you do high impact exercise, your stress levels have to go up a little bit in the beginning. It's still good for you, but when we're talking about stress, one of the best things to do is just consistent low impact exercise. So for example, walking or cycling or swimming or something like that. That consistency provides the body a fantastic internal environment to repair, and that's what we need. And the more we exercise, the better we're able to sleep. Sleep forms a beautiful part of our recovery and in our maintenance when it comes to dealing with stress. And then, of course, finally, as we said, mindset. Mindset is vital. It is important that we start to think not just what we want, but what other people need. So, for example, this seek first to understand, then to be understood. It seems like we're putting people before us. Well, actually, that's right. And that's a way that we can lead to internal peace, because that's exactly what we want. We don't want to be stressed. We all want to rest stress in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chidi. That was very interesting. And I liked actually what you said about movement, that it doesn't need to be high impact, high intensity exercise. And that because if you do low impact, then you can do it every day. You know,
Absolutely.
if you do high impact, then that is obviously something you need to have rest days, then that is a different story. So that is really important for people to realize. And just something like you were saying. And again, something you said, and I really enjoyed hearing that, because not everybody enjoys exercise.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that, you know, you need to love it, but
Yes.
understand the importance of it and just do it.
That's right.
Yes.
It's like medicine. It's like medicine. You don't, nobody likes taking medicine, but you just do it to maintain. Just make it into a habit. And even if you don't like it, but like me, you will still do it. Every day you'll do it. It will push you forward.
Yes. And to be honest, I think there are so many different activities that one can do. So it is easy to find something which one might enjoy more than the others. So,
Yes.
and so that is, again, it is about being open and actually realizing the importance of it, and then exploring the options out there. And luckily, you know, nowadays we have internet, you know, we can just go online and look for options. So that is really good. Well, let's have a look and see if we have any questions. Well, yes, interesting. I agree. Somebody's saying it was a very interesting story and presentation. Totally agree with that. Oh, you probably know Anthony Robbins, don't you?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if you know. Somebody's asking, well, he's wondering if he's actually vegan. I don't think so, to be honest.
I'm not sure of that. Yeah, I'm not sure of that. Yes.
No, I don't think that, to be honest. I remember in one of his talks, he mentioned something about being vegetarian or trying a vegetarian diet, but I don't think, he's vegan. Okay,
but most people are waking up to it, though, right? I mean,
yes.
So people who are successful in many areas know that, to be optimal in your intellectual acuity, it helps to be plant-based. It's
Yes.
not just that; it definitely helps.
Yes, and I actually like that you mentioned plant-based, and I think a lot of people prefer to call it plant-based rather than vegan anyway. And actually, there's one question, so let's answer that before we wrap up. Is walking exercise alone?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me what is the best exercise, I'd always say walking.
Yes.
And just about what you said, Dr. Leela, it doesn't take an awful lot of effort. You can get into the habit very quickly, and there's no pain involved usually. So you can just do it day in, day, integrate it into your natural lifestyle.
Yes, and it is cheap, and
Exactly.
it is available to everybody. So you don't need any special gear and equipment. You can just go out there and do it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I hope everybody else enjoyed it too. And we are really grateful that you took the time to present that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.